No surrender, no defeat. Maybe it's time for an Evercade retreat.
Hello and welcome to the Evercade Retreat. I'm Jaleco and today I'm ranking reviewing the games from the Jaleco Collection 1. I did the arcade collection a while back and this card, well, it's actually been one of my least played cards. I picked it up while I was building my Evercade collection. I came in late in, I think, late 2022. And I had a bit of a backlog of carts to get, and I was picking up a few carts each month. And this is one that came out around the time, well, it's one I picked up rather around the time a whole bunch of other carts came out, and it sort of fell by the wayside. Especially as none of the games really stood out to me. I have played a few of the games here and there, and some I have actually played to completion before setting out to do this video. Some I played and really wasn't impressed with. Others I'd had on my backlog, essentially thinking, yeah, I'm going to come in, I'll play this game properly at some point. So yeah, I finally got around to it. But as you may be able to tell from my preamble, it's not a car I was overly excited about, but it was before I got it. But when I got it, I had a feeling of disappointment. There are 10 games included, so let's get started and I'll give you my opinions at the end.
Number 10.
Bases Loaded is a baseball game for the NES. Now, I'm a Brit, I don't really understand baseball fully. I know the basics of it, and I'm also not really into sports games. So a sports game that I don't fully understand isn't the most appealing. And this doesn't even seem like a particularly great baseball game. I only said basketball then. Basketball would be better. Anyway, yeah, it doesn't seem like a great example of the sport on a console. But again, it's NES, so it is that much older. So it's hard to rag on this too much, apart from it seems fairly basic, I suppose. Like I said, not my jam.
Number 9.
Rival Turf, also known as Rushing Beat in Japan, is a beat-em-up that was released for the Super Nintendo. At the time I think was most famous for having a 2-player mode, which Final Fight famously didn't have. However, that's the only comparison to Final Fight this game would have where it would come out favourably. It is a completely uninspired, generic beat-em-up. The music and graphics are passable. I mean, they're perfectly fine. It looks the part, I suppose. Some of the animation is, well, it's alright, but there's a bit of jank around the game as well. But the actual gameplay itself, it's just, I know it ends up a chore to play, it's quite tedious. The enemies will often quite avoid you and hang around on the edge of the screen, so you end up spending a lot of time waiting around for the enemies to come near you. Often they just take too much damage to beat up and you just are beating on the same sort of 3-4 enemies over and over. I've often found myself slipping into a coma when playing this game. Funny thing is, about 6 months ago I decided I'd get around to beating this game because I didn't think I had. Only when I played it I didn't really really have much recollection of beating the game because, like I said, I didn't think I had. But when I got to the ending it's like, oh, I have beaten this before, and so I just wasted that 40 minutes or whatever it was of my life doing it again when I really didn't need to. So as you can tell from my gameplay here, I can't be arsed because this game is uninspired, unimaginative, and just ultimately just derivative and tedious, and yeah, I don't like it.
Number 8.
The Astarianax is an NES port of the arcade game which is found on Jaleco Arcade Collection 1, and it's quite a different game. The core basics are the same. You control a warrior with an axe, you hit enemies, and you have a power meter, so the more frequently you hit, the less power you do, and it takes a moment to recharge. It's a game in the sort of Rastan mould and maybe a bit of the Castlevania mould, and this version, it feels a bit more Castlevania-y. This version does feel a little bit more Castlevania-like than, say, Rastan. The knockback effect is very Castlevania. I'll come back to that. Graphically, it's quite decent. You've got a large sprite, you've got some nice backgrounds, you've also got some pretty bad music, and some of the colours are a bit garish to say the least. But yeah, presentation-wise, it's pretty good. The plot is also entirely different, but I can't be bothered to go into that. Gameplay-wise, like I said, the core basics are very similar to the arcade original, but this version pretty much sucks. The enemy movements, well, some are erratic and some are just a bit annoying. They can take a few too many hits for what would be ideal for this sort of game, and the knockback can send you flying into pits all too often. It gets rather frustrating. For this footage I used a cheat code for invincibility because I really couldn't be bothered to play this game again. I like this sort of game, they are my jam, but this one, well, it pretty much sucks. It is an absolute Poundland or Dollar Store Rastan or Castlevania. When the arcade original was a little bit, but at least that was a good one. This one isn't. It's not a good version. Also got plenty of sprite flicker. It's not to say it's completely devoid of fun, but yeah, it's not good.
Number 7.
City Connection is a port of an arcade game of the same name. This is the NES version, and you drive around, you have to colour all the tiles on level to beat it. There are other cars getting in the way, and there's a cat which gets in the way, and that's really annoying. And your car can jump, because 80s arcade games and jumping cars just seem to go hand in hand. I don't think I've ever played the arcade original. I've never played this version before, well at least not before getting an Evercade, but I have played versions of this game or things that have ripped it off. I think Carve Up on the Amiga, I've played this sort of thing before and I've quite enjoyed them. This NES version of City Connection I do not enjoy. And I can't quite put my finger on what it is. There's just a few annoyances, that cat which will just stop in your way and you have to just sort of jump and avoid it. Usually it'll appear when you hit it and there's not much you can do about it. Overall the game just doesn't feel that good to play. Like a bit of tweaking, it could have been a good fun game, and it's not terrible, I just don't really like it and find it more annoying than enjoyable, which is why it's ended up here in my ranking.
Number 6.
Super Goal 2 is a football game for the Super Nintendo. Yep, football where you use your feet to kick the ball, not this American hand egg nonsense. Anyway, without that out of the way, yeah, usual stuff, I'm not really into sports games, blah blah blah. But this is actually quite a fun sports game. The controls are actually fairly complex, but they don't take too long to get used to. The play is quite smooth, the presentation is good. Yeah, really not much to complain about here. Okay, it's not sensible soccer and it does lack some things, but for the most part it is a pretty good football game that seems to be aiming for a sort of semi-level of realism. It's not really overly arcadey or anything like that, and that suits me fine. This isn't really my jam. I'm not really the best person to give an in-depth review of what makes a good sports game, especially one from about 30 odd years ago. Yeah, I quite like it. It's fine for what it is.
Number 5.
Totally Rad is an action platformer for the NES. It's in the Mega Man mould for the most part. Got some nice graphics and a mixed bag of music, but a lot of it is pretty good. Like I said, it is in the Mega Man mould, and when I first played this, I actually found it really difficult and I didn't really get very far on the first level. And it wasn't until after I played through and beaten Mega Man that I thought I'd come back and give this another go, where I did find it easier. What sets it apart from Mega Man is you have a magic meter and you have a whole bunch of different magical abilities, transforming into things and different power moves to heal and all that sort of thing. I actually made things more difficult for myself, but not properly utilising these. Well, I mainly just used the heal for a large part of the game. Anyway, yeah, it's no Mega Man, it's not quite on par with that, but it is a decent little game and it's got some really interesting bosses. Interestingly, I've actually found the levels themselves much harder than the bosses, which are generally quite easy to beat. I think it's safe to say that if you like your Mega Man games, you'll probably like this, although it is maybe a bit of a Poundland Mega Man if you like.
Number 4.
Brawl Brothers is a beat 'em up for the Super Nintendo and is the sequel to Rival Turf. It adds new characters into the mix and is definitely an all-round better game. Gameplay feels a bit faster and smoother in general. I mean, everything is a step up from the first one. You know, having 3 new characters and choosing 2 to play through and then the others coming back as bosses later in the game. The angry mode works better. You can run. Yeah, like I say, everything's better about this game except for one thing. And that's in the default version for Brawl Brothers, is there's the sewer maze which comes in later in the first level. You have to navigate a maze, it gets quite tedious working through it. Apparently you can play the Japanese version, there's a code you put in or something, but I couldn't get it to work, so yeah, you kind of just have to endure that one. That aside, it's quite a fun beat 'em up. Not an absolute classic, it isn't a Final Fight beater, but as Final Fight isn't on the Evercade, nor is Streets of Rage, this is an acceptable substitute.
Number 3.
The Ignition Factor is a firefighting sort of action strategy simulator type thing that was made for the Super Nintendo. The game plays out in various missions. You have a building to go and rescue people from, or there's some other objectives as well, and you basically have to work out how you're going to go about entering the building, working with a time limit, rescuing people and achieving your objectives and getting out before you die in a horrible blazing inferno. You have your standard water hose, you can run and jump, and you've got various other bits of equipment you can get. Carbon dioxide bombs, different types of fire extinguishers, fire axe, Wonder why? Anyway, you have to choose your equipment at the beginning of the mission, so the mission briefing will kind of give you an idea of what you might need. There are other sort of strategic elements to it, like planning on where you're entering the building and things like that. And you've got information in the briefing to effectively work out how you're going to do the mission. This is not a easy pick up and play game. You have to plan things and think about it. I mean, you can go in sort of like guns blazing. There's probably a pun there, but I can't think of it right now. But you can't really go charging in without thought, or you'll fail if you do. Funny enough, this is the game on the cart that I was most interested in playing when I heard about it, but it took me a long time to really sit down and give it a good proper playthrough. It's the sort of game that I have to be in the right mood to play, but when I do, I find I really kind of engulf myself in its flames. See what I did there? Anyway, that sort of element is why I've ranked it here rather than higher, because it is a really good game. I absolutely enjoy playing through it. But it's not one I see myself coming back to very often. But I would say that if you have this cart, or if you're thinking about picking up this cart, definitely put some time into this game. It is well worth it.
Number 2.
Operation Logic Bomb is a top-down run and gun for the Super Nintendo. Well, it is and it isn't. I think run and gun is probably the wrong term for this game. Although it shares a similar view with games like the Chaos Engine and Smash TV, it doesn't play quite like them. It's a more sedate game, a bit more thoughtful. It's more plot-driven. This isn't just straight-out arcade action. Yeah, you have some cool power-ups, some lasers, some ricocheting weapons and three-ways and things like that. Not that kind of three-way get your mind out of the gutter. But what I mean to say is it has some element of, I wouldn't say puzzles, but it's more of a thoughtful game. There's a story to it that plays out through various cutscenes, which you access when you access to computers, and it probably won't make that much sense at first, but it unfolds gradually. But I'm not going into story spoilers or anything like that. The gameplay itself, like I said, it's a slightly slower paced, top-down action shooter. It's not particularly arcadey, and if you try and play it like more of an arcade game, you will die and probably not enjoy it that much. But if you take in the atmosphere, enjoy the game for what it offers, there's a really good game here. And it's not the longest game ever, and it's definitely worth putting some time into it and giving it a good chance, because I think you'll be glad you did.
Number 1.
Earth Defense Force is a shoot 'em up for the Super Nintendo. It's a port of an arcade game which is very similar, but there are some changes. There's some slight enhancements here, an extra weapon if I recall correctly, and just slight changes to the way your character or your ship levels up as you take more ships down. At least I think that's the differences anyway. There are some differences in the levels and things like that, but they're pretty minor. The key game is pretty similar. Naturally, this doesn't look quite as good as the arcade version, but it still looks good. It also has some really good music as well. It's a shoot 'em up that at first seems okay but not amazing, but it's definitely one that I warmed to once I really got a feel for it and started getting quite good at it, that I really started to appreciate it. In some ways I actually prefer this version to the arcade original. There's not much in it, it's the same game at its heart, there's just a few subtle differences, and yeah, like I said, I prefer this version slightly.
Final opinion.
As a whole, this cart is very much a mixed bag. Definitely has the variety on its side, and 10 games certainly isn't to be sniffed at. Unfortunately, a few of them just aren't very good, and depending on your taste, I'd say a good 6 or 7 games here generally have something to offer. But the peaks of it, the best games on the collection, don't hit the highs of some of the other collections. There is no standout, absolute must-play title here. I can't see this being many people's favourite collection, but it is definitely very solid. Worth picking up, and to score it, I'd have to give it a 7.5 out of 10. Anyway, I think that's it for this video. So, as usual, I'll finish up with a silly song, and I'll see you in the next one.
In a city torn by science, shadows start to play. Dimensional rifts are calling, pulling light away. Logic bomb unleashed, the future's in his hand. Through circuits and resistance, blast the chaos, pierce the veil. Dimensions realigned, the truth within the system. It's time to do or die. Through the corridors of danger, wires hum and glow. do or die.